So we're going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Dan Kitchen, if you can come on up here. I think everybody has played with the little toys out there at some point. I loved it when I said to Dan, oh, you want us to cover your display table at night? And he goes, no, because if someone steals something, they're going to learn something. So I thought that was pretty good too. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
All right. Thank you. Got the clicker here. Just want to get to start here on the first slide. There we go. Okay, so this is going to make me sound a little bit crazy, but I would rather a kid drill a hole in their finger than never get the chance to do it in the first place. And I know I'm talking extremes here, so let me explain how we find, at least how I'm trying to find a happy medium. My own hands-on skills, I'm Dan Kitchen, and I'm the co-founder of Make Stuff Move. My own hands-on skills and confidence started at a young age when I was trusted and encouraged to pick up tools, the stuff that adults use. Those things to me were empowering. Think back to the first time you got to drive a car, hopefully supervised. And because of this great support system that I had as a kid, I always followed what I loved doing, the things that I could see myself doing every day. So I actually went to school for a degree or a diploma in classical animation and 2D and 3D. This led me to do jobs in the animation studios, working on kid shows, and doing some freelance projects. It was really a fun way to, earn a living. But my curiosity always led me to take on new opportunities. So I actually jumped ship from the animation industry a few years in and went into a software company where I traveled around Europe and North America implementing business intelligence solutions for companies anywhere from 10 people to 500 people. And it was during that experience that I learned on the job how to code and do systems admin by allowing myself to be thrown into the deep end. Now, I did really enjoy the constant problems that coding delivers, but for me, I wanted to do more with my hands than just typing. So about 10 years ago, and this is about 7 years into that career, I saw an opportunity to apply for the TV show Canada's Handyman Challenge. And it was an opportunity to, go on TV and more importantly, after being on the show for a little while, I didn't make it all the way to the end, but really close. I learned that I was worthy of being there, and it gave me the confidence to decide to finally branch off on my own and start my own problem-solving, hands-on business, which I called Invent Art. This business is basically in the name, inventing and art. I don't reserve my creativity in business names. But this business, I do anything from making coasters, to designing restaurant interiors, to building websites, to giant police badges or Nintendo Switches. If it involves solving problems in style, I'm in. But my latest adventure, which is Make Stuff Move, is finally a chance to share the process instead of the results. And this has been really rewarding and a real bridge for me personally to get into the education system. It actually didn't start out in what you're kind of seeing today and what I have out on that table. It started out as this simple idea for what I call a servo sock, which was a great solution for somebody like me with some experience that wanted to make stuff move, so again, literal business name, with the common tools and materials that I had around me. But this had a flaw, or at least an oversight, because what it didn't do was allowed people that wanted to experience this problem but didn't know where to start. So this is really where Make Stuff Move started. And the vision for the company became really obvious. And that vision is to build confidence in the next generation, bridging art, technology, and hands-on skills. But the big question comes down to how. How do we create opportunities for any kid that wants to learn or any teacher that wants to teach? And more importantly, how do we do that anywhere, in any school? So what I'm going to share with you is how I'm approaching this in my company. So to this day, I still get a kick out of browsing the aisles of my local hardware store, where I can come up with ideas with all of those relatable things that I see around me. It's imagining what I could build with those things that I recognize. And I mean, even thinking back to when I was a kid and getting out into the shop or the garage where there'd be jars of random screws or bits of leftover things. To me, those things were like treasure. So what I find is that there's a disconnect when we hand kids complex injection molded parts. I mean, where are they going to start? It's hard for them to envision what they might do with some of those things. So by presenting opportunities to successfully build things out of the tools, materials, hardware, and electronics that are relatable, the stuff adults use, kids gain confidence to keep on building because they know what's possible. So it's pretty well established. There we go. Or no, I'm going to go back. It's pretty well established that kids will get excited about pretty much anything if it's hands-on and something they don't usually get to do, like using tools. So the real challenge actually became super obvious to me when I was talking a few years ago to one of my friends as a teacher. And she said, "Great, I'm teaching STEM next year, and I can't set the clock in my car." And this kind of made me realize that teachers can't be expected, and shouldn't be expected to have these skills necessarily to teach STEM, CTE, those sorts of things, and especially if we're going to do this in scale. Educators are often generalists and need to be, and they're often outfitted with generalist classrooms. I could be stubborn and go out on a fight to say that every school should have a wood shop, for example, but I want to meet the education system where it's at. And a lot of the time, what I want to do is turn any classroom into a wood shop, because all you really need is some basic, real tools. So what this actually means is that the real problem to solve is how to encourage and build confidence in the teachers, local librarians, makerspace mentors, and parents to effortlessly deliver these opportunities for kids and to do it in any environment. Help them set the clock. So part of that is that fundamental understanding of things. And what I like to call that, well, actually, I don't call it that, the coding world does, which is the Hello World tutorial. It's the idea that when you're trying to learn a new coding language or something technical, all you want to do is have it spit out the term Hello World. It's basically a way to prove that that fundamental thing is going to work before you layer it with more complexity. And for me, I actually think back to an experience I had in one of my first jobs when I was in the animation industry. The company that I was working with needed a simple web page. They needed just a way to share a file with one of our clients, and this is before the days of Dropbox and Google Drive. And one of my coworkers, she just whipped open a notepad file, and she just typed out a web page. It took like 30 seconds. And I actually remember being blown away like this guy. And it wasn't because of the results. We can see it was a very basic web page with a button on it. And you can actually see I put the code for doing something like that in the bottom corner. It was the aha of finally understanding how web pages worked. Finally, I knew where to start if I wanted to approach this myself. So what I always try to remember is that despite my experience, is how amazing something can be the first time you get that Hello World tutorial. It's this approach that shows that something is going to work before you layer it with the harder stuff. And to me, this doesn't have to be reserved for just the coding world. This could be making a cut with a piece of, a saw and a piece of wood before you try to build a table. This could be blinking an LED with a microcontroller before you try to build a robot. Or knowing what all that stuff is in the hardware store so that you can actually feel empowered to build and fix things yourself. And my approach specifically, at least how I like to teach people, in a lot of cases, is just what not to do. So I like to call that safely surviving injury. Some of my fondest memories as a kid are whittling wood with my great uncle. He was an old school farmer that took no issue at all with giving a 5-year-old me a razor sharp knife. And of course, despite the don't cut towards yourself and those types of lessons, I did. But the interesting part is, I don't remember it actually hurting when I cut myself. What I do remember was turning into a mini Tom Cruise and trying to Mission Impossible my way past my godmother to sneak a Band-Aid. So the pain was the potential that I might not get to go and use that whittling knife again if I got caught. And I actually kind of experienced this. So this came up to me again. I was in a makerspace workshop about a few months ago, and a little girl that was about 8 years old, she had earlier in the day burned herself a little bit with a hot glue gun, and then during my workshop, she poked herself in the finger with a drill bit. So she needed a Band-Aid. I'm not trying to maim children, I swear. But at the end of the workshop, she was, sitting, and all these, to her they're teenagers, but all these big people are standing around her as they filled out the incident reports. And I just had this feeling all of a sudden of like real urgency, because I realized like this kid might not use tools anymore. And whether it's her or going home with an incident report and her parents going, "Oh my God, these people almost killed my kid today." So I took her aside at the end of the workshop, and I just said to her with a bit of a smile, "I know you hurt yourself today, but now you know what not to do, right?" And she kind of nodded, and I said, "So now you're good with tools, because from here you can just get better." So I guess my point on this area is I like to curate the potential injuries. I mean, we talked earlier about making mistakes and that they're going to happen 3 times an hour, by giving a kid a handsaw, not a chainsaw. That's my daughter there with the handsaw. So let me go to the next slide here. So the next thing is that I was fortunate to be handed tools at a young age, despite all of the scrapes and injuries and that sort of thing. And I was even more fortunate to have a support system around me that kept this spark alive. As I got to the later years of my education, where I got to the later years of my education, where being a straight A student, or mostly straight A student, meant that I should be destined for university. I chose animation because of this support system, and it was because of the practical hands-on skills. I actually remember the fork in the road, where it was mechanical engineering versus animation. Very, very different careers. But I thought about what I would love doing every day, and it was animation. And I always did think it was kind of wrong that I had to, that this was some crazy decision I was making. I do think the tables are turning a little bit, which is great, and we've talked about a lot of this today. We're realizing that these careers are necessary. And I think that jobs in the future, or the more stable jobs in the future, are going to be places where AI can't step in as much. It's going to step in and help, but especially the jobs that it can't replace. So, to prove my point, I decided to ask ChatGPT a bit of a smart-ass question. I said, "Hey, ChatGPT, can you install a toilet for me?" First prompt, the answer was perfect. I'm just going to read it here. "I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, I can't physically, or I'm not physically capable of installing a toilet for you. My abilities are limited to information and answering questions through text-based communication. I suggest hiring a licensed plumber or contractor who has the necessary skills to install a new toilet properly and safely. They will also ensure that all local building codes and regulations are followed to prevent any potential issues or safety hazards." So I mean, even AI already understands that these types of skills and knowledge are very important and hard to replace with things like AI. I mean, this guy can't install a toilet. So I do feel that this kind of stigma that we've talked about is changing, and it's the idea of, what now? And for the people that are lagging behind, and I mean, this came up as well today, that we're getting this kind of necessary kick with the labor shortages in skilled trades jobs, as well as some of the, in my opinion, mass layoffs we're seeing in the tech world. We just don't need as many people at companies like Facebook and Twitter and Google because AI. So the point in this section is we need to start valuing these careers, because if we value these careers, so will the next generation. I should have shown that slide there. Now, I liked this one. Despite my years of experience, is that I still get a sense of accomplishment when I get to bridge my technical skills with my hands-on skills. And it's actually really rewarding to be a part of this community now, where I get to see the same thing happening for teachers and students as they get to bridge CTE and STEM skills. So I think the takeaway here is that all you need to do is think back to your childhood. When you were trusted and encouraged to build something with your own two hands. So I want to show kids that there's a future in these skills. I want us to be confident so that they can be confident to drill their first hole, ideally not in their finger. Thank you.